1 Academy Award, 6 Golden Globes, 2 Emmys, 40 years of performances that redefined what acting could look like. And in September 2024, Nicole Kidman stood outside the Venice Film Festival, the greatest night of her professional year, and learned that her mother had just died. She didn't go back inside to collect the award. She got on a plane. There's a certain kind of woman the world mistakes for invincible. They carry themselves too well. They work too hard. They return too quickly. And so the world assumes the pain is manageable, that someone with that face, that career, that life could not possibly be carrying what she's actually carrying. Nicole Kidman has been carrying it for decades. 2 marriages, 2 divorces, 2 children she barely sees, 2 parents buried in the span of 10 years, 2 babies lost before they ever had names, and a marriage she celebrated on its 9th anniversary in June 2025 that was quietly, irreparably over by September. So what is the real story behind the most decorated actress of her generation? How does a woman who has played every conceivable form of human suffering on screen and done it with terrifying precision learn to process her own? What actually happened inside a marriage to the most famous Scientologist in the world? And why did it cost her the children she fought so hard to have? How do you lose both parents, a second marriage, and your sense of home inside the same 12 months and still show up? And at 58 years old, after everything the world has watched her survive, what is Nicole Kidman actually holding on to? To answer any of that, we have to go back to the beginning. Not the Hollywood beginning, the real one. Nicole Mary Kidman is born on June 20, 1967, in Honolulu, Hawaii, an accident of geography, not identity. Her parents, Anthony and Janelle Kidman, are Australian citizens temporarily in the United States on student visas. Her father is a biochemist working toward a PhD in Hawaii. Her mother is a nursing instructor. Both of them are, in the specific way of serious, educated people, absolutely certain about what matters: learning, service, conversation, and the slow, deliberate work of becoming. They move back to Sydney when Nicole is 4 years old. She grows up in the northern suburbs of the city, Lane Cove and then North Sydney, in a household that takes the world seriously. Her father eventually becomes one of Australia's leading clinical psychologists, specializing in depression, anxiety, and mental health. Her mother joins the women's electoral lobby, campaigns for equal rights, and edits her husband's books alongside working full-time. Nicole and her younger sister Antonia grow up at a dinner table where current events are discussed, pamphlets are handed out on street corners, and the idea that you might drift through life without contributing to it is simply not entertained. But inside this ordered, intellectual, principled world, one thing is completely unexpected: the girl is electric on stage. From the time she is small, Nicole Kidman wants to perform. She takes ballet lessons. She appears in school plays. She is tall, painfully awkwardly tall by the time she is 13, nearly her full adult height of 5'11", moving through classrooms full of kids who do not miss the opportunity to remind her. She is shy in certain rooms and enormous in others. In front of an audience, something comes loose in her that doesn't come loose anywhere else. At 14, she drops most of her formal studies to pursue acting in earnest. At 16, she films her first movie. She is 17 years old when her mother is diagnosed with breast cancer. Everything stops. She takes a massage therapy course so she can provide physical rehabilitation for her mother during chemotherapy. She moves back home. She puts the career on hold without discussion, without resentment, without negotiation. Her mother eventually beats the cancer, but the experience imprints on Nicole Kidman in a way that never fully leaves: a bone, deep understanding that the people you love can be taken from you without warning, and that when that moment comes, nothing else matters. Not the career, not the awards, not the public life. You get on a plane. Her mother survives, and Nicole goes back to the work. By 1989, she is 22 years old, and the film Dead Calm turns her from a promising Australian actress into someone Hollywood cannot ignore. The thriller is lean, terrifying, and entirely dependent on her ability to carry it, and she does, in ways that make it clear something unusual is happening. Within months, she is cast opposite Tom Cruise in Days of Thunder. She has no idea what she is walking into. Tom Cruise, in 1989, is the most bankable movie star on the planet. He is also a devoted and increasingly central figure in the Church of Scientology. He sweeps into Nicole Kidman's life with a velocity she has never experienced. He is charismatic, purposeful, brilliant at the mechanics of stardom. She is 22, Australian, still figuring out how the machinery of Hollywood works. She falls completely, she will say later, not cautiously, not with one eye open. She falls the way you fall when you are young enough to believe that love means surrender. They marry on Christmas Eve, 1990. She is 23. Almost immediately, she becomes pregnant, and almost immediately, she loses the baby. An ectopic pregnancy, a fertilized egg implanted outside the uterus. That ends in emergency and grief and the quiet, crushing medical verdict that follows. It is highly unlikely she will ever conceive naturally. She is 23 years old, newly married, desperately wanting children, and she has just been told that her body may not cooperate. She does not break, she redirects. They adopt a daughter, Isabella, born 1992, then a son, Connor, born 1995. She throws herself into motherhood alongside one of the most relentless film careers of the decade, Moulin Rouge, Batman Forever, To Die For, Eyes Wide Shut. She receives Academy Award nominations. She reinvents herself in roles that require her to disappear entirely, to shed vanity, comfort, recognizability, and hand the audience something raw and real from the inside of a character she has constructed from nothing. The same discipline that makes her extraordinary in front of a camera is, privately, the thing that holds the marriage together long after it should have ended, because the marriage is not what it looks like. From the outside, it is Hollywood royalty, two of the most famous people on earth, photographed at every premiere, apparently solid, apparently golden. From the inside, something else entirely is happening. The Church of Scientology has a word for people like Nicole Kidman's suppressive person, an SP, someone whose influence on a committed member is considered harmful enough to require management. And by the mid-1990s, Scientology's leadership had apparently decided that Nicole, Catholic, skeptical, unwilling to fully commit, was pulling Tom Cruise away from the organization that had structured his entire adult life. What that meant in practice has been documented extensively by former members in the years since. Phone tapping, strategic interference, the slow, methodical management of Tom Cruise's environment to minimize Nicole's presence in his inner world. She is aware of it. She tries to counter it. It is, ultimately, a game she cannot win, because it is not a game being played fairly, and it is not one she is willing to win by compromising what she believes. On February 5, 2001, their representative announces their separation. 2 days later, Tom Cruise files for divorce. He cites irreconcilable differences. That same month, while the marriage is collapsing and the papers are being filed, Nicole Kidman suffers a second miscarriage. She is 33 years old. She has just lost her marriage, her second pregnancy, and the 2 children who have chosen to stay with their father and his church. The years that follow are professionally extraordinary. She wins the Academy Award for Best Actress for The Hours in 2003. She builds one of the most critically adventurous careers in Hollywood: Cold Mountain, Birth, Rabbit Hole, 9, Fur, Margaret at the Wedding, The Paperboy, roles that most stars would refuse because they are too strange, too dark, too demanding, too likely to fail. She accepts them precisely because of those qualities. There is something in the risk that steadies her, something in the extreme emotional exposure of difficult work that gives her a place to put what she cannot say out loud in real life. But the children, Isabella and Connor, are growing up in a world that is systematically organized to minimize their connection to her. She is labeled, in Scientology terminology, a suppressive person. Actress Leah Remini, a former church member, would later confirm publicly what had long been rumored privately, that the children had been taught to see their mother through the lens of the organization's doctrine. Isabella marries in 2015. Nicole is not there. She hears about it and does not speak about it, not publicly, not in any way that could deepen the distance. She says, when asked, what she will always say: they are adults, they make their own choices, I love them, I am here. She says it with the specific restraint of someone who has rehearsed their grief until it no longer sounds like grief. In 2005, she meets Keith Urban at a Los Angeles event. He is a country music star from Australia. She has a crush, she will say later, and is too nervous to approach him first. He calls her. They are inseparable within months. She describes falling in love with him the way you describe something that heals a specific wound, not dramatically, but quietly, persistently, like warmth returning to something that had gone numb. They marry in June 2006. 6 weeks later, Keith Urban enters a rehabilitation facility for alcohol and drug addiction. She stays. She has already lost one marriage to forces she couldn't control. She is not walking away from this one without a fight. He does the work. He gets sober. He stays sober. And for 19 years, what they build together in Nashville, away from Hollywood, on a farm, with 2 daughters she will describe as miracles, is the life she had been trying to construct since she was 23 and in love and convinced that love would be enough. In July 2008, after the ectopic pregnancy, after the miscarriage, after being told she would likely never conceive, Nicole Kidman gives birth to Sunday Rose. She is 41 years old. She holds her daughter and calls it a miracle, and means it in the most literal sense she knows. In December 2010, a second daughter, Faith Margaret, is born via gestational surrogate. She has 4 children now. 2 she can't reach. 2 she holds every morning. In September 2014, her father, Dr. Anthony Kidman, clinical psychologist, author, the man who built the intellectual architecture of her entire inner life, dies suddenly at 75. He is visiting Nicole's sister, Antonia, in Singapore when it happens. A heart attack, a fall. The accounts are slightly inconsistent, and it doesn't matter because the result is the same. He is gone without warning, without the goodbye she didn't know she needed, in a city she isn't in. She calls Keith. He is about to go on stage. He walks off the stage. He boards a plane. He flies 6 hours back to her and carries her through the next 2 weeks. She will spend the next decade looking for a father in every room he isn't in. She will mention him in interviews with a specific kind of tenderness, the tenderness of someone who has accepted the loss intellectually but not emotionally. She would still want to have dinner with him, she says, years later. Him and no one else. Just her father, one more time. 10 years pass. She works relentlessly. Big Little Lies earns her the Emmy, the reinvention, the acknowledgement from a new generation that she is not coasting on past greatness but actively, restlessly pushing further. 9 Perfect Strangers, The Undoing, Special Ops Lioness, Baby Girl, a film so difficult, so emotionally exposed, so far outside what anyone would have expected from her, that it earns her a Volpe Cup at Venice for Best Actress. She arrives at Venice in September 2024 for the premiere, the greatest professional moment of her year, and she learns that her mother, Janelle Ann Kidman, 84 years old, the woman who shaped her and guided her, and made her, who beat breast cancer when Nicole was 17 and never stopped being the fixed point in her world, has just died. She leaves the festival. She doesn't go back for the award. The director, Helena Rajan, accepts it on her behalf and reads Nicole's statement from the stage. Today I arrived in Venice to learn shortly thereafter that my beautiful, brave mother, Janelle Ann Kidman, has just passed. I'm in shock and I have to go to my family. This award is for her. She shaped me, she guided me, and she made me. 8 months later, in May 2025, she writes about it in an op-ed for the Sydney Morning Herald. The tears still come, she says. Huge raindrop tears. And she doesn't know when they'll stop. She doesn't have an answer for that. And then, in September 2025, exactly 1 year after her mother died, exactly a decade after her father, the news breaks that Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban have separated. 19 years, 2 daughters, a farm in Nashville, a life carefully constructed from the rubble of everything that came before it. She is quiet about it. She will be quiet about it. She says, in the only interview where she addresses it directly, that she is grateful for her family, that she is moving toward what is good, that she will not discuss it further out of respect. She says it the same way she always says the things that hurt the most, with the specific restraint of someone who has rehearsed their grief until it no longer sounds like grief. At 58 years old, Nicole Kidman is not living the life imagined for her when she was 22 and falling in love with a movie star on the set of a racing film. She is not the person the magazines photographed at those premieres, not the wife in those couples' portraits, not quite any of the versions the public has constructed and retired over 4 decades of watching her. She is a woman who has lost more than the world has been allowed to see. 2 pregnancies, a marriage consumed by a church that saw her as a threat, 2 children she loves from a distance she did not choose, both of her parents, and now a second marriage that lasted nearly 20 years and still ended. What remains after all of that is this to work, the daughters who are still with her, the sister who has been there every time, and something else, something harder to name but visible in every role she has chosen since she was old enough to choose, the willingness to be seen, fully, uncomfortably, without the protection of distance or glamour or careful framing, to stand in the most exposed place available and not look away. She learned it at 17, sitting with her mother during chemotherapy. She learned it at 23, in the wreckage of an ectopic pregnancy. She learned it at 33, in the silence of a marriage ending and children choosing to stay. She learned it at 47, calling her husband from a city she wasn't supposed to leave and needing him to come. What the roles keep asking of her, life keeps asking first, and she keeps saying yes. That is not a triumph story. It is something more honest than that. It is the story of someone who has been asked over and over again to survive things that should have broken her, and who has decided every single time that she would rather be in it fully than number herself to any of it. The question worth sitting with is simpler than any of the ones we've asked. Not about her choices, her marriages, her children, her losses. Just this: is there someone in your life whose pain you've underestimated because they carry it too well? Because the most decorated actress of generation has been grieving quietly and without ceasing for most of her adult life, and the world has mostly called it poise. Subscribe for more untold stories of the legends who shaped our world. Even the strongest people you know are carrying something you can't see. The difference is not the weight, it's the willingness to keep walking.